Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched Kepler Station Academy grow larger in the distance. The massive space station looked like a giant metal flower floating in the dark space around the gas. Giant Helios Prime. Bright lights dotted its surface and ships moved in and out like busy insects. "First time seeing an alien academy?" asked Commander Lisa Parker, the human officer sitting next to him. It had been his guide for the past 3 days of travel. "First time seeing anything alien?" Jake replied. His voice was calm, but his eyes were wide with wonder. At 19 years old, he was the youngest human ever selected for the Galactic Educational Exchange Program. Back on Earth, he had worked as a wilderness survival instructor in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Now he was about to study with aliens from 12 different species. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Jake grabbed his simple backpack and followed Commander Parker through the airlock. The station's air tasted different, more metallic than Earth air, but he could breathe it fine. "Remember what I told you?" Commander Parker said as they walked down a long hallway. "The other species think humans are weak. They call Earth a garden world and us a soft prey species. They think we're harmless because we don't have claws or fangs or natural armor." Jake nodded. He had read the reports. The alien survey teams had looked at Earth from space and seen green forests, blue oceans, and peaceful cities. They missed the fact that humans had made it look peaceful by becoming the top predator of everything on the planet. They entered a large room, filled with the strangest creatures Jake had ever seen. A tall being that looked like a walking lizard was talking to something that seemed to be made of living crystal. Near them, a creature that looked like a giant praying mantis was reading from a tablet with arms that had too many joints. "That's your class," Commander Parker said. "Survival Sciences with Professor Vexty. He's the big lizard one." Jake watched the professor. Vexty stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dark green scales. His eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a snake. When he moved, Jake could see powerful muscles under the scales and sharp claws on his hands. "Good luck, Commander," Parker said. "Try not to surprise them too much on your first day." Jake walked over to the group. The conversation stopped as the alien students noticed him. He could feel their eyes studying him, looking at his soft pink skin, his flat teeth, his small size compared to some of them. "Ah, the human arrives," Professor Vexty said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Class, this is Jake Morrison from the planet Earth. As you know, Earth is classified as a Class II garden world, and humans are listed as a soft prey species." The crystal being, who Jake learned was named Kilo 7, made a sound like wind chimes. "I have read about humans. They have no natural weapons and very fragile skin. Their world has a very stable climate with few dangerous predators." A mantis-like creature, Zaraketh, clicked her mandibles together. "My species, the Chithari, evolved on a world where everything tries to eat everything else. We developed these cutting mandibles and armor plating to survive." She demonstrated by slicing through a metal rod with her jaw like it was soft butter. Other students began showing off their natural abilities. A student from a gas giant world could become nearly invisible by changing the density of his body. A reptilian student regrew a finger that he cut off, the new digit growing back in just a few minutes. A student with fur covering her entire body showed how she could survive in temperatures that would freeze most beings solid. "Very good, Professor," Vexty said. "Now, human Jake, please show us what natural survival abilities your species possesses." Jake stood in the center of the group. All eyes were on him. He looked very ordinary compared to the others. He had no claws, no fangs, no armor, no special powers that were obvious to see. "Well," Jake said slowly, "humans don't have claws or fangs. We can't regrow lost parts or become invisible. Our skin is pretty thin, and we can't survive extreme cold or heat without protection." Some of the alien students made sounds that Jake guessed were similar to laughing. Zaraketh clicked her mandibles in what seemed like amusement. However, Jake continued, "Humans are very good at adapting to different situations. They can survive in almost any environment on our planet. We can run for very long distances without stopping. We can go without food or water longer than most creatures our size. And we're very good at learning new things and solving problems." Professor Vexty nodded slowly. "Interesting. These sound like the abilities of a scavenger species rather than a predator. Very well, we shall test these claims. Tomorrow we will. Begin with survival simulations. Each student will face challenges designed to test their natural abilities. The class began to break up, with students forming small groups and talking among themselves. Jake noticed that none of them approached him, seemed to think he would be the weakest member of the class. As Jake walked back to his assigned quarters, he thought about what Commander Parker had told him. The aliens saw humans as soft and weak because they didn't understand what made humans dangerous. They looked for claws and fangs and armor, but they missed the real weapons humans possessed. Back on Earth, Jake had spent years in the wilderness. He had tracked bears through mountain forests, survived alone for weeks with nothing but basic tools, had faced down mountain lions that weighed twice as much as he did. He knew that the most dangerous predators were often the ones that didn't look dangerous. The next morning, Jake arrived at the simulation room early. Professor Vexty was already there, preparing the equipment. "Nervous, human Jake?" the professor asked. "No, sir," Jake replied. "Just curious about what kind of test you've prepared." Professor Vexty's yellow eyes studied Jake carefully. "Simulation will place you in a hostile environment. Most students struggle to survive for more than a few hours without using their natural abilities. Given your species classification, I do not expect you to last very long." Jake nodded calmly. "What kind of environment? It's an aquatic world? Deep water, limited oxygen, crushing pressure, and dangerous predators. It will test your ability to adapt quickly to a completely unfamiliar and deadly situation." The other students began arriving, talking excitedly about the challenge. Jake listened to them discuss their strategies. Most planned to use their natural abilities to avoid the dangerous parts of the simulation. "The human will probably panic in the deep water," Zaraketh said to Killa 7. "Garden world species usually cannot handle pressure situations. I estimate he will request to exit the simulation within 10 minutes, Killa 7 replied, his crystal body chiming softly. Jake said nothing, simply watched Professor Vexty prepare the simulation equipment and thought about the hundreds of hours he had spent diving in mountain lakes and rivers back home. He remembered his training, in breath control, in staying calm under pressure, in reading the behavior of dangerous animals. "Are you ready, human Jake?" Professor Vexty asked. Jake looked around at the alien students, who were all watching him with expressions that seemed to expect failure. He thought about all the times people had underestimated him because he looked young or small or harmless. "Ready?" he said. The simulation chamber hummed to life around him, and Jake Morrison stepped into the deep water, completely unaware that he was about to change how the entire galaxy saw his species. The simulation chamber filled with dark blue water that felt cold against Jake's skin. He found himself floating in what looked like an endless ocean. Above him, far away, he could see a faint glow that might have been sunlight. Below him was only darkness that seemed to go on forever. The water pressure pressed against his body from all sides. Jake felt his ears pop as the simulation made him sink deeper. Around him, he could hear the other students entering their own simulation pods. Through the water, their voices sounded strange and worried. "The pressure is too much," came Kilo 7's voice, distorted by the water. "My crystal structure cannot handle this depth. I can barely move," said another student. "The water is too thick here." Jake remained calm. He had been diving in deep mountain lakes since he was 12 years old. The cold water reminded him of the alpine lakes back in Colorado, where the temperature stayed near freezing, even in summer. He let himself sink slowly, conserving his energy and oxygen. The simulation had given each student a small breathing device that would provide air for about 30 minutes. Most of the alien students were using their air quickly because they were panicking. Jake controlled his breathing, taking slow, deep breaths like his diving instructor had taught him years ago. As he sank deeper, the water around him began to change. Strange lights flashed in the darkness below. Jake recognized the signs of large creatures moving in the deep water. The simulation was about to introduce the predators that Professor Vexty had mentioned. "Something is coming," Zaraketh's voice came through the water. Her mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign that she was afraid. Large creatures approaching from below. Jake looked down and saw them. Three massive shapes were rising from the deep darkness. They looked like sharks, but much larger than any shark that had ever lived on Earth. Each one was at least 30 feet long, rows of teeth that glowed with a pale blue light. Their eyes were like burning coals in the dark. Water. The other students began to panic. Jake could hear them thrashing in the water, trying to swim away from the approaching predators. Their rapid movements and heavy breathing were using up their air supply quickly. "Stay still," Jake said into his communicator. "Fast movements will attract them." But the alien students could not control their fear. Their natural instincts told them to flee from predators, but in the deep water, they had nowhere to run. The shark-like creatures began to circle them, drawn by the vibrations of their panicked swimming. Jake did something that made all the watching students and Professor Vexday freeze with shock. Instead of swimming away from the largest predator, he began swimming directly toward it. "The human has lost his mind," Zaraketh said. "He is swimming toward certain death." But Jake had not lost his mind. He'd spent years studying predators in the Colorado wilderness. He knew that these creatures, even though they were alien, would behave like most large predators. They would attack prey that acted like prey, but they might be confused by something that acted like it was not afraid. The massive shark creature came toward Jake with its mouth open, showing teeth as long as swords. Jake did not swim away. Instead, he dove down and positioned himself next to the creature's side, just behind its massive head. He grabbed onto the thick dorsal fin and held on tight. The creature was confused. Nothing had ever grabbed onto it before. It tried to shake Jake off, but he held on firmly. His years of rock climbing had given him strong hands and arms. The creature began to swim in circles, trying to reach the strange small being that had attached itself to its back. Jake rode the creature like he was riding a wild horse. He used almost no energy while the massive predator tired itself out trying to shake him loose. The other students watched in amazement as the human turned the hunter into transportation. "This is impossible," Professor Vexday said to himself as he watched the simulation. No prey species would approach a predator like that. While riding. The large creature Jake was also watching the other predators. They were circling the panicking alien students, getting ready to attack. Jake knew he had to act quickly to save his classmates. He let go of the dorsal fin and swam to a position right in front of the creature's head. The massive shark opened its mouth to bite him, but Jake was ready. He grabbed the creature's nose and pushed himself up, using the predator's own momentum to launch himself toward the surface. The confused creature crashed into one of its companions, and both predators began fighting each other instead of hunting the students. Jake had turned the hunters against each other. "Swim to the surface now," Jake called to the other students. While they are distracted, the alien students did not need to be told twice. They began swimming upward as fast as they could while the predators were busy fighting below them. Jake reached the surface first, even though he had been the deepest. His controlled breathing meant he still had air left, while some of the other students were almost out of oxygen. He helped pull Kilo 7 to the surface when the crystal being's heavy body began to sink. "How did you do that?" Zaraketh asked. When she reached the surface, her mandibles were no longer clicking with fear, but with amazement. "You rode a predator like it was a tame animal. I studied how they move," Jake said simply. "Most predators have blind spots and behaviors you can predict if you watch them carefully." Professor Vexday ended the simulation. All the students found themselves back in the chamber, breathing normal air again. The alien students were all looking at Jake with new expressions. The fear and amusement were gone, replaced by confusion and respect. "That was not the behavior of a prey species," Professor Vexday said slowly. His yellow eyes were fixed on Jake. "Prey species run from predators. They do not ride them." Jake shrugged. "Sometimes the best way to deal with a dangerous situation is to get closer to it, not farther away. If you understand how something works, you can use it instead of fighting it." The class was quiet as they left the simulation chamber. Jake noticed that the other students were no longer treating him like he was weak. Instead, they seemed uncertain about what he really was. That evening, Professor Vexday sent a message to the Academy administration. The message was short but concerning. Request immediate review of human species classification. Initial assessment may be severely incorrect. Jake returned to his quarters, not knowing that his simple demonstration of human problem-solving had just started a chain of events that would change how the entire galaxy saw his species. He only knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, and he was looking forward to them. News of Jake's performance in the water simulation spread through Kepler Station Academy like wildfire. In the dining hall, groups of alien students whispered about the human who had ridden a predator like it was nothing. Some thought it was just luck. Others began to wonder if there was more to humans than their files suggested. Professor Vextai could not stop thinking about what he had witnessed. That night, he reviewed the simulation recordings over and over. Each time he watched Jake swim toward the massive predator instead of away from it, he felt more confused. No prey species in the galaxy had ever shown such behavior. The next morning, Professor Vextai decided to test Jake again. This time, he would create a scenario that would require not just individual survival skills, but leadership and group tactics. If humans were truly just harmless garden worlders, Jake would fail. When forced to work with natural predator species, today we will attempt a more complex simulation, the professor announced to the class. You will work together as a team to survive a crash landing scenario on a hostile planet. Your ship has crashed, your technology is damaged, and you must cooperate to reach a rescue point 50 kilometers away. The alien students looked at each other with interest. This was the kind of challenge that played to their natural strengths. The saurian species, like Professor Vextai, had evolved from pack hunters with natural leadership hierarchies.
HFY.
Like Zara had hive mind instincts that let them coordinate perfectly. The Vorthan crystals like Kilo 7 could share thoughts directly with others of their kind. The human will be useless in a group scenario, whispered a saurian student named Rexus to his friend. Garden world species have no pack hunting instincts. They cannot lead or coordinate with true predators. Jake said nothing as he listened. To the assignment, he'd worked with search and rescue teams back in Colorado, leading groups of people through dangerous mountain terrain when hikers got lost or injured. He knew that leadership was not about being the biggest or strongest. It was about making good decisions and keeping the team alive. The simulation began with all 8 students standing next to the wreckage of a crashed spaceship. Around them stretched a barren landscape of red rocks and twisted metal plants. Air was thin and tasted of sulfur. In the distance, they could see strange flying creatures circling like vultures. We need to establish a leadership hierarchy, Rexus said immediately. As a saurian, he naturally assumed he should be in charge. I am the largest and strongest. I should lead. Size does not matter for leadership, clicked Zara. The Chithari have superior coordination abilities. I should guide the group. While the alien students argued about who should be in charge, Jake was quietly examining their surroundings. He noticed things the others missed. The direction of the wind, the type of plants that grew in different areas, the behavior of the flying creatures overhead. We need to move, Jake said calmly, interrupting the argument. Those flying things are scavengers. More will come soon, and they will bring predators that hunt whatever the scavengers find. How do you know this? Asked Kilo 7 his crystal, body chiming with curiosity. Jake pointed to the circling creatures. Watch how they fly. They are not hunting us directly. They are waiting for us to die or for something else to kill us. That means there are bigger predators in this area that the scavengers follow. The alien students looked up at the flying creatures with new understanding. Jake was right. Creatures were keeping their distance, but they were definitely watching and waiting. We should move toward those hills, Jake continued, pointing to a range of rocky peaks about 10 kilometers away. Higher ground will give us a better view of the area and make us harder for large predators to approach without being seen. But the rescue point is in the opposite direction, Rexus objected. We should go directly there. Ouch. Jake shook his head. The direct path goes through that valley where all the metal plants are growing. Plants like that usually grow where there is water underground. Water means animals come there to drink. Animals mean predators that hunt them. Jake began walking toward the hills without waiting for the others to agree. After a moment of confusion, the alien students followed him. They were surprised to find themselves taking direction from the human they had thought would be the weakest member of the team as they traveled. Jake continued to point out things the others had not noticed. He showed them which plants might be edible and which ones were probably poisonous based on their colors and smells. He identified tracks in the dirt that indicated what kinds of creatures lived in the area. How do you know all this? Sar asked. Your planet is supposed to be a safe garden world. Earth has dangerous places too, Jake said. I spent years learning to survive in mountains and forests where bears, mountain lions, and wolves live. You learn to read the signs that tell you what is around you. When they reached the hills, Jake's prediction proved correct. From the high ground, they could see large creatures moving through the valley below. The beasts looked like a cross between dinosaurs and tigers, with powerful legs and massive claws. If the group had gone the direct route, they would have walked right into a hunting ground. We can follow the ridgeline, Jake said, studying the landscape. It will take longer, but we will stay above the predators and still reach the rescue. Point. The alien students began to realize that Jake was not just surviving the simulation. He was thinking several steps ahead, planning routes and predicting dangers before they became problems. This was not the behavior they expected from a prey species. As they traveled along the ridge, they encountered their first real danger. A pack of the tiger dinosaur creatures had somehow gotten up onto the rocky hills and was blocking their path ahead. The beasts were huge, each one twice the size of Jake, with teeth as long as daggers. We have to fight them, Rexus said, extending his claws. It is the only way. No, Jake said quietly. Look at how they are standing. They are not hunting right now. They are protecting something. It's probably young ones, or a food cache. Jake studied the creatures for a long moment, then picked up several small rocks. Instead of throwing them at the predators, he threw them far to the left, making noise in a different area. The creatures turned toward the sound, thinking something was trying to approach their territory from that direction. While they were distracted, Jake led the group quietly around them on the right side, staying low and moving slowly.
Ow.
How did you know they would react that way? Kilo 7 asked, after they had safely passed the predators. Territory will investigate threats to that territory, Jake explained. If you give them something else to focus on, you can usually avoid a fight. By the time they reached the rescue point, it had become clear to all the alien students that Jake had been leading them the entire time. He had not taken command by being aggressive or dominant like their species would. Instead, he had simply made better decisions and kept them all alive. Professor Vextai watched the simulation end with growing concern. The human had not just survived a group scenario, he had become the leader of species that were supposed to be natural predators. Even more disturbing, he had done it by thinking like a hunter, not like prey. That evening, Professor Vextai sent another message to the Academy administration. This one was marked urgent. Human species classification requires immediate reevaluation. Behavior indicates possible apex predator characteristics. Request full review of Earth's survey data. Jake returned to his quarters, unaware that his simple demonstration of leadership and tactical thinking had just convinced one of the galaxies. Leading experts on predator behavior that humanity might be the most dangerous species anyone had ever encountered. The Academy administration had seen enough. After Professor Vextai's urgent messages about Jake's unusual performance, they decided to put the human through their most extreme test. If Jake really was just a harmless garden worlder, this final simulation would prove it once and for all. Director Herrix, a massive crystalline being who ran the Academy, called Jake to his office. The room was filled with floating displays showing data about every species in the galaxy. Jake felt very small. Standing in front of the 12-foot-tall director, "Human Jake Morrison," Director Herrick said, his voice sounding like glass chimes in a windstorm. "Your recent performances have been unusual for a member of a prey species. We have decided to administer our ultimate survival test." Jake listened. Calmly, he had expected something like this would happen. "You will face a solo survival simulation on a Class X Deathworld environment," the director continued. "These are the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. Only apex predator species are expected to survive such conditions. The test usually Lasts 72 hours. What kind of environment? Jake asked. A planet where everything is designed to kill you. Extreme weather, poisonous atmosphere, venomous creatures, plants that eat meat, and environmental hazards that change constantly. Most students from predator species barely survive the first day. Director Herox leaned forward, his crystal face reflecting the light strangely. If you are truly from a soft garden world species, you should refuse this test. There is no shame in admitting your limitations. Jake thought about all the times he had spent alone in the Colorado wilderness during winter storms. When the temperature dropped to 40 degrees below zero and the wind could knock a person off a cliff, he remembered tracking wounded bears. Through forests where one mistake could mean death. I will take the test, Jake said. Word spread quickly through the academy that the human was going to attempt the Deathworld simulation. Students from every species gathered in the observation room to watch. Many had made bets on how quickly Jake would fail. The longest anyone was willing to bet was 6 hours. Professor Vexti was there too, along with Commander Parker, who had been called to witness the test. The professor's yellow eyes were filled with worry. He had begun to suspect that humans were not what their classification claimed. But if he was wrong, Jake might not survive this simulation. Jake entered the simulation chamber wearing only basic clothing. The test did not allow any technology or tools. Survivors had to use only what they could find or make on the hostile planet. The simulation began. Jake found himself standing on a world that looked like a nightmare. The sky was dark red, filled with swirling toxic clouds. The ground was covered with sharp rocks that looked like broken glass. Plants with teeth and moving vines grew everywhere, reaching toward anything that moved. The air burned his lungs when he breathed. The gravity was heavier than Earth normal, making every step an effort. In the distance, he could hear the roars and screams of creatures that sounded like they could tear apart a spaceship. Most students who faced this simulation spent the first several hours just trying to find shelter and clean air to breathe. They usually used up all their energy fighting the environment and had nothing left when the real dangers appeared. Jake did something different. Instead of fighting the environment, he began to study it. He noticed that some areas had plants that were dead or dying, which meant the air there was probably cleaner. He saw that certain rock formations provided shelter from the toxic wind. Within the first hour, Jake had found a cave that offered protection from the poisonous air. He used rocks to block the entrance partially, leaving only a small opening that he could defend easily. Then he began to make tools. The watching aliens were amazed. Jake seemed to know exactly what he needed to survive. He made a simple spear from a sharp rock and a straight piece of metal he found near his cave. He created a water filter using sand, cloth from his shirt, and a metal container. He is not just surviving, Professor Vexti said quietly to Commander Parker. He is preparing to hunt. By the end of the first day, Jake had established a secure base camp and had begun exploring the area around his cave. He moved carefully, studying the tracks and signs left by the dangerous creatures that lived on this world. On the second day, the simulation introduced its greatest challenge. A massive predator, designed to be unbeatable, appeared in the area. The creature was called a shadow claw, and it was the size of a small building. It had armor like a tank, claws that could cut through steel, senses that could track prey across vast distances. The shadow claw was designed to force students to run and hide until the simulation ended. No one was expected to face it directly. Jake did not run. Instead, he began to track the creature. For hours, he followed the shadow claw through the dangerous terrain, learning its patterns. He saw where it liked to sleep, what it preferred to eat, and how it moved through different types of landscape. Jake was doing something that no other species had ever attempted in this simulation. He was hunting the apex predator. The creature was enormous and powerful, but it had never been hunted before. It did not know how to deal with something that followed it instead of running away. Jake used techniques that humans had developed over millions of years of hunting on Earth. He did not try to fight the creature directly. Instead, he wore it down. He made noise to keep it from sleeping. He used sharp rocks to injure its feet. When it walked through narrow passages, he drove it toward areas where the toxic plants would slow it down. The watching aliens could not believe what they were seeing. The human was using persistence hunting, a technique unknown to most galactic species. He was following the massive predator relentlessly, never letting it rest, never giving it a chance to recover. On the third day, the Shadowclaw was exhausted. It had not slept in over 30 hours. Its feet were bleeding from stepping on the sharp rocks Jake had placed in its path. The creature that was supposed to be the ultimate predator had become the prey. Jake had prepared a trap in a narrow canyon. When the tired creature stumbled into the trap, Jake was ready. He used his spear and the leverage of the rocky walls to bring down an opponent that weighed 100 times more than he did. The simulation ended with Jake standing over the defeated Shadowclaw, holding the spear he had made from scavenged materials. He was injured and tired, but he was alive. More than that, he had done something that was supposed to be impossible. The observation room was completely silent. Every alien student and professor stared at the displays showing Jake's victory. They had just watched a member of a supposedly harmless prey species hunt and kill the most dangerous predator their simulations could create. Director Herrock spoke first, his crystal voice barely above a whisper. This is not possible. Prey species do not hunt apex predators. Commander Parker stepped forward. Director, I think it is time you learned the truth about Earth and humanity. Professor Vexti nodded slowly, his yellow eyes fixed on the image of Jake in the simulation. We have made a terrible mistake in our classification. This human is not prey, is something we have never seen before. Jake exited the simulation chamber to find dozens of alien eyes staring at him with a mixture of awe and fear. He had passed their ultimate test, but in doing so, he had revealed that everything the galaxy thought it knew about humans was wrong. The quiet young man from Colorado had just proven that Earth was not a garden world, and humans were not a soft prey species. They were something much more dangerous, and the galaxy was about to find out exactly what that meant. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Educational Consortium took place 3 days after Jake's impossible victory in the Deathworld simulation. Representatives from all 12 member species had gathered at Kepler Station Academy. The large conference room buzzed with nervous energy as beings who rarely agreed on anything tried to understand what they had witnessed. Director Herrock stood at the center of the room, his crystal body reflecting the worried faces around him. We are here to discuss the reclassification of the human species and their home planet, Earth. The evidence we have gathered suggests our initial assessment was catastrophically wrong. Jake sat quietly in the corner with Commander Parker. He still did not fully understand why everyone was so upset about his performance in the simulations. To him, he had simply done what any person from Earth would do when faced with dangerous situations. Professor activated a holographic display showing Jake's simulation recordings. Observe the human's behavior during the aquatic test. Instead of fleeing from predators like any normal prey species, he approaches them. He uses the predator as transportation. This is not prey behavior. This is apex predator behavior. The assembled aliens watched the recordings with growing unease. Representative Zuthkar, a large insectoid from the Chithri homeworld, clicked her mandibles nervously. Perhaps it was luck or unusual intelligence for a prey species. Then explain this, Professor Vexti said, switching to the group survival simulation. Watch how the human takes leadership of natural predators without using dominance or aggression. He leads through superior tactical thinking and threat assessment. His species has evolved hunting strategies that our predator species never developed. The room grew quiet as they watched Jake guide the mixed species team around dangers and toward safety. His calm analysis of the environment and the behavior of hostile creatures was unlike anything they had seen from garden world species. And finally, Professor Vexti said, his voice becoming very serious, the Deathworld test. The display showed Jake systematically hunting the Shadowclaw, wearing it down over 3 days through relentless pursuit. No known species has ever hunted our apex simulation predator. Most try to hide from it. This human tracked it, studied it, and killed it using techniques we do not understand. Commander Parker stood up. With your permission, I would like to provide additional information about Earth and humanity that was not included in our initial surveys. Director Herrick nodded. Please proceed. Commander Parker activated her own display, showing images of Earth from space. Your survey teams classified Earth as a Class 2 garden world based on its appearance. Green continents, blue oceans, stable climate, peaceful cities. What they missed was how Earth became peaceful. The display changed to show various Earth environments: dense forests, vast deserts, frozen tundra, deep oceans. Earth is not a garden world. It is a Class X death world that humans have completely dominated. Every environment on our planet contains dangers that would kill most galactic species. We survive there because we are the apex predator of everything. Representative Glimtar, a gaseous being from the ethereal species, made a sound like wind through crystal. Impossible. Your species has no natural weapons, no armor, no specialized adaptations for predation. That is exactly what makes us so effective, Commander Parker replied. We do not rely on claws or fangs or armor. We use intelligence, endurance, and cooperation. Humans are persistence hunters. We track prey until it exhausts itself. Then we kill it. We can outrun any animal. On our planet over long distances, Jake finally spoke up. Every animal on Earth is afraid of humans. We hunt everything, and everything knows it. Bears, wolves, sharks, lions, tigers, they all avoid humans when possible. We have no natural predators because we eliminated or dominated everything that tried to prey on us. The alien representatives looked at each other with growing alarm. Representative Kexley, a reptilian saurian, spoke with a trembling voice. You are saying that humans are the dominant predator. On a death world, not just dominant, Commander Parker said. We are the only species on Earth that hunts every other species. We live in every environment, from the frozen poles to burning deserts to the bottom of the ocean. We have spread across our entire planet because nowhere is too dangerous for us to survive. Jake nodded. In the mountains where I worked, we had bears that weighed 800 pounds and could tear apart trees with their claws. Mountain lions that could leap 40 feet and break a person's neck with one bite. But they ran away when they smelled humans coming. They knew we were more dangerous than they were. Professor Vexty's yellow eyes were wide with realization. The human's behavior in our simulations was not unusual for his species. It was normal. Humans do not think like prey because they have never been prey. Director Herrick made a decision. That would change galactic history. I am ordering the immediate reclassification of Earth from Class 2 Garden World to Class X Death World. The human species is reclassified from soft prey species to adaptive apex predator. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Within hours, every government and military organization in known space was reviewing their policies toward humanity. A species they had thought was harmless had just been revealed as potentially the most dangerous predators anyone had ever encountered. Jake returned to his classes the next day. But everything was different. His alien classmates no longer saw him as weak or harmless. Instead, they treated him with careful respect. The way intelligent beings treat something that could kill them if it chose to. Zara. Keth approached him nervously in the hallway. Jake, I wanted to apologize for underestimating your species. We did not understand what humans really are. We're not monsters, Jake said gently. We just adapt to survive. On Earth, that meant becoming very good at hunting and problem solving. But we also learned to cooperate and help each other. That is why we survived when other species on our planet did not. Professor Vexday asked Jake to stay after class. I must know, the professor said. When you were tracking the Shadow Claw, in the simulation, were you afraid? Jake thought for a moment. At first, yes. Fear can be useful. It keeps you alert and makes you think carefully.
Ow.
I was focused on the hunt. The hunt, Professor Vexday repeated slowly. That is what we failed to understand. To humans, danger is not something to flee from. It is something to hunt and overcome. Word spread throughout the galaxy about the reclassification of humanity. Some species wanted to restrict contact with humans, fearing what the adaptive apex predators might do. Others wanted to study human techniques and learn from their success. Jake finished his exchange program 6 months later and returned to Earth. He had made friends among the alien students and had learned much about other species and cultures. But he had also taught the galaxy something important about humanity as his transport ship approached Earth. Jake looked out at the blue and green planet that aliens now knew was one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. To him, it just looked like home, a place where humans had learned to thrive by becoming the most successful hunters the universe had ever seen. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And Jake Morrison, a quiet young man from Colorado, had shown them that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones that do not look dangerous at all.